Breakfast with Disaster. My name is Dan Bauer. We are live here every week, every Tuesday at 10 a.m. We have a simple mission here. We want to tell you about all the worst things that can happen so you know how to avoid them. And we know that because we are Serve Pro and we're the people who clean them up, fire, water, mold, what have you. Before I get into the show today, good morning. I see some folks hopping on. Good morning, Jackie. I have a couple of announcements to make. One, we are hiring. We are hiring big. We are growing at a rapid and potentially alarming rate. And I would love to hire you and your friends, and actually your bosses will get mad at me if I say hire you, but your friends, your family, your nephews, nieces, uncles, aunts, whoever. We are hiring for basically every position here: production leads, production techs, construction leads, construction techs. Um, anyone who wants to join the family, now is kind of the time to do it. Um, so if you're interested in that, you know anybody who's looking for work, shoot me a message. I would love to chat with you more about some of the opportunities here. They are very exciting. And could be very lucrative for the right person. Announcement number two, I would love, and I will put it in the comments, if you check out the wonderful video, we posted it on our Facebook. The Lake Erie Seaway Trail posted it. Wonderful video that my sales rep here, Chris, created over the weekend to highlight some of our Earth Day activities. Our team was over at the Seaway Trail Center, assisting with cleaning the beach, with cleaning the center, getting it ready for summer, giving back to the community for Earth Day, and supporting our truly great Lake Erie. I would love for you to see that video. I would love for you to let us know what you think. So definitely go and check that out. Today we are talking about. I'm going to take this prize wheel out of here. Talking about a an interesting topic and a question that I've been getting a lot lately. This is a gross time of year for many people, especially as it starts to warm up. People around me are sneezing, they're coughing, they're itching their eyes, they're having horrible, awful, life ruining allergic reactions all the time. Especially it's warmer, we see higher pollen counts. That is common. That's nothing crazy. But I get an interesting question around this time of year from customers who who are trying to figure out what's going on. And so this happened to me recently. We were in a customer's home. She had had recent water damage, um, and she developed basically the sniffles. Her nose was running. She was uncomfortable. It wasn't like a huge call a doctor, call 911 concern, but she was curious. Did her allergies come from the pollen that was in the air? Because at that point it was a little bit warmer. Or was this some evidence that there was mold or microbial growth growing in her home, that the indoor air quality there was compromised? How do you know? How can you tell the difference between those two things? And is one more severe than the other? We live with pollen every day, but mold kind of gets everybody freaked out. So let's dig in. I want to try to answer her question here. Um, Before we try to answer, um, we have to kind of answer the initial question of what would even cause mold or microbial growth to grow. Um, is it even going to be present in this situation? And in a crude way, the answer is pretty simple. Mold's all around us. So if you're asking me if there's mold in this room, I'm going to tell you yes. Mold is a wonderful phenomenon in many ways. It pre-existed us on this earth. It is older than we are. It is generally a good thing for society, for life on Earth. Um, it decomposes dead things. It makes beer and wine and cheese. If we did not have mold floating around doing these things, we would all be knee deep in a pile of trash all the time. Um, and because mold is so plentiful and so natural and very good at staying alive and spreading, basically any space you're in is going to have mold spores laying around. If you're taking a sip of your coffee right now, you're probably taking a sip of a healthy amount of mold spores. You're breathing them in, you're eating them, they're landing on your skin. It might give you the heebie jeebies to think about that, but that is absolutely true. Mold is all around us. So if you ask me, hey, is there mold here? Do you think there's going to be mold here? I'd be dishonest if I didn't tell you, yeah, there's probably mold here anywhere that you go. But what about heightened levels of indoor exposure? That's generally what people mean, right? Is there more mold than there should be here? Are there more spores floating around in the air than there should be here? Um, when people ask me that, you look for a couple of things. What would cause that mold to grow? Even if you can't visually see growth yet, what would cause heightened levels of spores to occur in an indoor space? There are three things that mold needs to grow, and you can write these down. You will not be quizzed. Two of them are everywhere. Oxygen. Unless you're living in a vacuum, you have oxygen in your house, in your business, what have you. Food. And food sources for mold are everywhere. It's basically anything even remotely organic. Paper, wood, cardboard, the unpainted side of drywall, which is coated in paper. Even I've seen people have mold form on chairs where they sit every single day, and their skin cells and dust and what have you have formed a silhouette basically on that chair, and mold has grown on that silhouette. Mold is very hardy, and as long as there's something for it to eat, it will grow. Food sources are everywhere. So generally, the X factor that you're going to see that's going to cause heightened levels of mold to grow is moisture, water, humidity. Um, when things are abnormally wet, or even when the air is abnormally wet, mold and microbial growth are going to follow soon after. So this customer I was talking to who was sniffling had a water damage event, and she had, and maybe this wasn't the best move, but she'd waited about 72 hours to really properly deal with it. She'd done a little bit of extraction and whatnot on her own, but she had held off on calling the professionals. She was waiting to speak to her insurance adjuster. Not a great move for mitigating damage, and certainly not for holding back mold. That 72 hours is plenty of time for heightened levels of mold spores to grow, for visual levels of mold growth to occur. There's a plenty of chance that, yeah, you're dealing with heightened levels of spores here. You're breathing them in. So, next question. Here's a nice gross picture of mold. If the environment is right for mold and microbial growth to form, how can you tell if you've been exposed to those heightened levels? What are the symptoms? And you've probably heard on the news. Good morning, Lisa. You probably heard on social media, especially as like a cesspool for this stuff, about all sorts of horrible, 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 horrible stories regarding mold. Think of stories about people whose organs fail, who suffer just total exhaustion, total lethargy, people who are chronically ill. It is very popular right now to tie those things back to mold exposure, to blame those things on mold exposure, to get mad at your doctor because they don't agree with you that it was because of mold exposure. And don't get me wrong, plenty of those things are true. Plenty of those things are scientifically backed. But basically, I taught a mold class recently that had this very problem. I was about halfway through and somebody raised their hand and said, "Hey, I watched a documentary the other day where a guy was exposed to mold and ate half his face," which was not really a question, but we dug into it, and there really was no significant scientific link between these two things. And I bring these up not to downplay really serious concerns. Mold has, in fact, been linked to toxic effects, really serious problems. But I will tell you that those stories are pretty rare. In most cases, if you are exposed to heightened levels of mold, all you're going to suffer is A, nothing. Most people with healthy immune systems who are generally healthy, even if they're in a space that has heightened levels of mold spores, etc., as long as they're not in there forever for an extended period of time, licking the walls or something, they probably won't even notice. They might not react at all. Your immune system is pretty good at saying, "I don't want this stuff in the body. I'm going to get it out." Where you're going to have problems, and this is generally what we see, is that there are certain people who are predisposed to having some kind of reaction to heightened levels of mold, especially indoors. And mold, microbial growth, all of these things. That's going to be people who basically aren't that good at filtering it out. Infants and the elderly have the same problem. They don't have fully formed, fully developed, fully functioning immune systems. Asthmatics have issues with their respiratory systems, diabetics, and generally immunocompromised people. People within these populations, yeah, they're probably going to have a reaction if there's somewhere that there's heightened levels of spores. It's not great for them. If I'm in a senior living community, for instance, and there's a water damage issue, I usually tell people, these folks, especially these folks who are on oxygen, are at a significant risk. You should probably think about, moving them out of the space just to be safe. What reactions are they likely to see, or are you likely to see if you are exposed to mold? Again, there are serious, really serious effects that you should be aware of, you should be careful of, you should not downplay, and if someone tells you something's happening, you should take them seriously. But generally, most of the time, the worst thing that people suffer is, in fact, an allergenic effect. I'm talking about my eyes itch, my skin itches, I'm sneezing, I'm sniffling, I'm coughing. That's generally about as bad as most people's exposures get. Um, Not to say that those other reactions don't happen, but if you're looking for an underlying cause, if you're looking for what those symptoms would be that would show you, hey, okay, I've got water in my house, I've got humidity in my house, and I've started to sneeze, that's a pretty good indicator that something's going on. That's probably the most common sequence of events that you're going to see. But here's the real, actual question my customer is asking me. She's sneezing, she's coughing, she's wondering what's going on. If she's suffering this allergic reaction, how can she tell what it's from? Is it from the pollen in the air? Is it from her cat? Or is it from potentially heightened levels of indoor mold spores, compromised indoor air quality in general? What is causing her reaction? How can you tell if it's coming from mold? And the unfortunate answer is that you really can't, certainly not in the moment. Um, an allergic reaction is an allergic reaction. They can differ in severity. They can differ in exactly what those symptoms are, but it's tough to tell one from another. Uh, my suggestion to her was basically two things. One is if you feel like you are having a negative reaction, go talk to your doctor. Especially if you start experiencing anything more severe, go seek medical attention. They're going to be able to tell you what's going on with you. And they may send you to an allergist. They may help you to diagnose. It could be a whole process, but it's worth it if your quality of life is suffering. Second thing, much more straightforward. Let's deal with the root cause. You've got this water damage anyway. You've got potential microbial growth. We're going to take a look. We're going to look for moisture. We're going to dry this place out. We're going to remove or dry out any materials that are abnormally wet. We're going to get your indoor environment back to a safe place. And if we need to bring in an indoor hygienist who's going to be able to run some tests, give us some guidance, especially if we see suspected microbial growth, visual levels of growth, we're probably going to do that. That's what we do. Because what I can do there is, I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose you and I can't prescribe you medicine, but I can certainly fix your building about better than anyone else can. Get that indoor environment back to a safe place and give you your life back. And as it turned out, we dried the place out. No real actual visual microbial growth to deal with, but after we dried it out, customer was fine. And that's a pretty good indication that what was going on had something to do with the indoor air environment. So I'm not a doctor. I should say that. I will never be a doctor at this point. I think I'm stuck at ServPro forever. Sorry, mom. Sorry, dad. But I hope that helps you guys figure out what's going on if you are sniffling, sneezing, what have you. All right, time for what everyone's waiting for, the Wheel of Names, the prize wheel. And so if you're looking at this, you don't know what it is. And good morning to you, Nikki, my love. That's my wife joining. I love you. If you've never seen this wheel before, it's very simple. Members of the Serve Pro Mug Club have their number on this wheel. If you're not in the Serve Pro Mug Club, all you got to do is ask. You get a coffee mug. It's got a number on the bottom. It gets registered to this wheel. I call your number, you win a prize. You're watching, and I call your number, you win a double prize. So, incentive to watch, incentive to learn about mold and gross things like that. Let's get going. Let's spin this wheel, Mr. Nixon. Here we go. And we're spinning. We're in the 400s. 434. That is going to be Nancy over the Franzak Agency. So, Nancy, if you're watching, let me know. Shoot me a comment. It's the only way I can tell if you're here. Otherwise, you're going to get a single prize and you're going to feel like you really missed an opportunity. So I'm going to wrap things up. I'm going to let you guys get back to your day. Thank you for joining, hanging out. It's been a pleasure as always. We will be back next week at 10 a.m. Tuesday. Another episode of Breakfast with Disaster. Remember, tell your friends we are hiring, we are growing. We would love to have them here. And check out that redfish video, that Lake Erie Seaway Trail video. It is awesome. Have a great day.